Joanne Hillhouse here. On today's edition of Creative Space, I'll be talking with one of my favorite writers from Antigua and Barbuda, Flory Williams-White. Flory and I intersect through Widadli Penn. She's one of our main judges for a number of years. I have edited a couple of her books, and I've been a fan since her first book, Pink Teacups and Blue Dresses. Welcome, Flory.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
How do you feel? How are you feeling?
Slightly relieved, having gone through the first, I guess, interaction with persons buying the book, because there's always that moment between, saying, yeah, you have a book and somebody getting it in their hand and reading it to know, like, what people are going to think about it. Do they like it? You always have that moment because that's your baby going out into the world.
I know there are authors, and it's perhaps advisable, who say, I never read the reviews. I've never had that luxury because although I'm traditionally published, I have to do a lot of hustling to make sure that my book is getting the buzz it needs, which means that sometimes I have to amplify reader reviews, or I have to try to create that rippling of the water for myself. So I engage with the reviews, not in responding to the respondents, but I don't engage in terms of I disagree with you, or thanks for sharing. I might say thanks, but might not. Best to just stay out of it altogether. But I do share the reviews, I do read the reviews, and I think it's a bit of a luxury to be able to insulate yourself from that. But when we exist in the either small print or indie space, we don't have that luxury. So you've had to engage with the reviews as an indie book publisher. You have your own imprint. What has that experience been like, especially with this book, but in general?
And we also live in a small country, so you can't avoid running into people in the supermarket, or you sold it to your coworker. They're going to tell you, so you can't avoid it. For me, it helps. The feedback helps in terms of being an indie publisher. When I get to the eventual point of being able to take on someone else, I would have an idea of what the market likes. Because, unfortunately, in this space, it's a business decision. What book is the book good? Is the book going to sell in this market? Is it going to, make back what it was spent to create it? So the feedback kind of helps to say, this is what people in Antigua, this is what children in Antigua like. This is what parents are looking for. So those, I do have to listen to reviews and see what people are into. And I found it interesting yesterday that when people would pass by and say, oh, I have boys. And I would say, well, it's not a girly story. It's a story that, yes, the girl is the main character, but it's a general neutral theme. And they're like, no, my something with cars or something, boys and whatever. So a gentleman was saying to me, he's like, maybe there's a boy in the cover, the girl has on a pink dress, so those little things. But it's just interesting, you had with the previous book with Wonderful World of Johan, parents of girls and boys, they bought it, no questions asked. With this one, it was always a hesitation of,
you know what that speaks to? That speaks to some of the toxicity that we still need to work through. Because why can't a boy have a doll? Why can't a girl have a car? I mean, to me, these things are gender neutral. I mean, let the child direct their energies towards what interests them, is how I see
it.
But I know that parents project their own, we're going to make him this, and especially with boys, they're going to make him this. We have a lot to work through. Let's put it that way. So these are things you have to think about as a publisher, what the cover looks like, who's going to respond and why. But as a writer, at least for me, and I think I see evidence of it in your writing, I try not to let that noise get into my head when I'm creating. And I don't see in your writing any pandering to a particular thing. It feels organic.
I definitely learned that lesson after my second book, because there's parts in it that weren't authentic. It was people getting into my head. I let my mom read it and she had made some comments and I tried to add it in and I realized after I read it, I didn't, when I look back and I don't like those parts. And I realized I shouldn't have added it. There's maybe some parts I tried to maybe also tone down because you didn't want, can't believe she wrote about that, you know what I mean? So after that I learned I'm just gonna do what I have to do, and I have to be authentic to myself. This book was an interesting journey. I have a lot of unfinished work
But we
on
all.
my that's been there for years, and sometimes they kind of nudge you like, hey, we're still here. So I started to work on something and started to change into something that I didn't expect. So I said, I think I need more time with this because I need to delve into it more. So I was looking at another idea I had written down because I really wanted to try an illustrated book. And it wasn't working out. And something just nudged me one night randomly and it just said, Dance on the Moon, you've never written about that. What does it mean? And it just started to turn. I just sat in a corner in the bedroom under some low light and I just wrote out the whole story. And then I gave it some couple of days to breathe and I went back over and edited, and that's where that came from. So the things I have had that I was gonna work on, they're still there.
The evolution of the book. That's kind of how I framed the conversation that we're having, because you said you wrote it and then you redrafted it. You put it down, very important, you came back to it. And if you don't realize how important putting it down is, I think about the number of times just this past week that I sent an email and then the following day, I'm looking at the email and I'm like, what did I say? Because I didn't put it down and I saw what I thought I wanted to say when they read that, so putting it down helps you to freshen your eyes. Your brain tends to fill in the blanks when you're reading something that you wrote. Your brain fills in what it knows you want to be there. So when you put it down, it's almost like somebody else is reading it, even though it's you coming back to it. So talk a little bit about that process of coming back to it and redrafting.
I think once you've written the first draft or whatever you're doing, it's just good to walk away and just give your mind time to reframe, to think about something else, and you'd be amazed what you see when you come back because you've just gotten a chance to sort of detach. So when you come back, you're almost looking at it with new eyes. Yeah. And sometimes, depending on your state when you're writing it, you're tired, you're trying to get through to, maybe trying to finish a chapter or something like that. So maybe you're not taking the time you need. So when you go back, that's the chance you get to form some ideas. Maybe you're in the shower and you said, oh, what if this happens? Or I should have added this part. I didn't think about that. Or, if this happens, then this wouldn't make sense. So it just needs, I think emails, they say never send an email when you're emotional. Whatever the emotion, I would say draft it in and walk away when you've calmed down or whatever. So I think same with books, with drafts, just walk away, give yourself time, give your mind time to detach and refresh, and get a new perspective.
I think that's a beautiful way of putting it, detach and refresh, because that's exactly what it is. I think the other misconception, and I'm glad that you spoke about the process earlier, the other misconception is that children's books are easy. I've written novels, I've written teen young adult novels, I've written some nonfiction and journalism and all that, and I've written children's books, and each of them pose their own challenges, and I wouldn't call any of them easy. What has the experience been like for you? Because you've written, I would say, adult, young adult, contemporary, and I don't know what to call Teacups and Blue Dresses, because it's not fiction, but it's not really nonfiction. It's kind of in that space. And it's the coming of age in different aspects of, life. And then you have the children's books, The Wonderful World of Johann and Dance on the Moon. Are any of them easy? Are the children's books easy?
No, I wouldn't say that they're easy. I think people confuse short with easier,
Mhm.
but with short, I think I had talked about it during the Budadi Pen competition results, the ceremony, that with a short story, you have less space to wrap up a whole story, to complete something. Whereas with a longer a novel also, you have a lot of time and space to develop things. With a short story, you have a limited amount of space or time, especially with children's books, depending on the age groups. Certain age of children are not going to read and beyond a certain amount of, you're going to start losing their attention. So you have to be able to fine tune everything you want to say in this small box and still make it interesting. So you don't have the space to expand on things.
I think you're also looking at the fact that you have to do everything that you're doing in a novel, but in a smaller space with a more simple vocabulary in some cases, depending on the age group, and more simple concepts in terms of how you connect ideas, because you still have to have a fully realized character in terms of character consistency and character motivation and character arc. You still have to have a well-established setting. You still have to have mood and atmosphere and all those pacing and spark and all those things that make a novel cohesive. And you have to do it in less pages, with fewer words, and in a way more simply. So I think it's just as complicated, but for different reasons, or just as challenging, but for different reasons. What was the most challenging part in the writing of Dance on the Moon?
I think the most challenging part was trying to make sure the message was formulated in a way that a child would understand. It's not a complicated message, but maybe for a child, you have to massage it more and simplify it. And of course, you said you have that limited word spacing, you have to use simpler words. So I think that was the most difficult part is a child, a 5-year-old, going to understand what this concept means and how they could possibly use it.
Beautiful cover, by the way. Who's the illustrator?
Her name is Sandamali. I'm not going to try to pronounce her last name. She's from Bangladesh, so that was a very...
Okay, so you source the illustrator online.
Mm-hmm. It's a very interesting process because she's not from this region.
Mm-hmm.
Pardon?
Tell us a bit about that. What made it interesting?
She's not from this region, so each scene I had to find exactly what I wanted in terms of how the character should look, how the background should look. Because I find people from that side of the world, they tend to use, to me, their scenery is a bit darker for whatever reason, that don't have the vibrancy of the Caribbean, I find. So it was a lot of back and forth and explaining. It was very specific in terms, I took a long time to go through, find photos of, and for me, how I've imagined people in my mind and then giving it to somebody else to draw is a difficult process because I saw it, this is how I see it, and I can't necessarily explain to the T how she should look. So it took me hours going online, Google images, looking for Lula. Like, who's the closest thing to Lula? Until I found the girl and I said, I like her. She could be Lula. The grandmother, I just saw Anthony Anderson's mother in my mind. So that's who I showed her. I said, somebody like this, even the dressing, So that was a difficult part in terms of, this is in my mind. I wish I could draw so I could just...
What informed that choice to work with an illustrator so removed from your culture?
Budget, to be honest.
I figured you had on your business hat there, like, this is my price and I'm going to find to make the most economic choice.
Any writer that's listening, illustration is up there. I mean, I did my research. I tried locally, but because I would never try to bring anybody down past, because I know it's a craft, it's an art. It's just that was what my budget could allow. I had gotten a lot of good advice from Farida Isaac Carr. She had done a children's book previously, illustrated book, and she had another one. I don't know if it's come out as yet, but she'd given me, she was actually the one that said, I found this person online from that same region. And she was even explaining to me, she gave me a lot of tips in terms of, they charge you per illustration, but try to put in as many spreads as possible. That's one illustration. So one spread that goes from, double page, that's one illustration, and you've gotten 2 pages. So that was some really good advice. So I was really thankful for her to, sharing those tips with me in terms of how to maximize the budget that you have and get in the illustration that you need.
Yeah. How did you go about, it's a weird question. How do you go about finding an editor?
Well, I have one that works. And she's never steered me wrong.
In the case of Lula, that everything she's going through, there are these emotional notes to them, these emotional colors to them as well, which I think is something that you handle really well. So I'm going to ask you, what is a note that you've received from me? Well, first of all, break down what the editing process is. For any person who's watching this who may not know, what does that mean? I know what it is as an editor, but as a writer, what is the editing process? And then I'll follow up with my next question.
Well, you send the draft to the editor, and you sit nervously for the next 2 weeks or however long they ask to give you, waiting for that email, that call, or whatever it is to see what's your feedback. Then you take the feedback, you kind of sit with it for a while, think about it, and then you try to work on another draft. Sometimes you'll agree, sometimes you won't agree with some of the things, because sometimes these writers feel strongly about something. I want this to be in there, or it has to do like this. And it should be a conversation where they can explain, well, I didn't get it, or it didn't translate that to me. And then you can sit and you can think on it and maybe how to reword it or rework it. Or so it's a conversation, it's a dance back and forth that you have to be patient with. And also, as I said, once again, give it some space. Read the review and give it some space before you go and work on the redraft.
Okay, so I think it's important to say that there are different types of edits as well, because you might have, think of it as a house. If you're putting up a house and you have to do, if you have a house that exists rather, and you have to do major remodeling, as opposed to if you're just slapping on a coat of paint, or as opposed to if you're just doing the fixtures or whatever. So think of editing like that. Some works require major structural editing, some a simple pass copy edit, and some just a final edit or proof. And sometimes you get a work that thinks it needs one thing and really needs something else, and that can be difficult as well. You might think, well, I just need a final proof, and no, this has major structural issues, and we need to look at that. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how you received the major edits, and what was the edit that, I'm going to give a question in 3 parts. What was the edit that most infuriated you, that you most disagreed with? And what was the edit that brought clarity for you, that you were like, yeah?
I think what you talked about with the rhythm, with adding in the Dance on the Moon verse more often, that I didn't think about. And when I was reading to my son, that's the thing he can repeat the most.
Okay.
He knows the little song or verse, depending on when you're reading it, how you read it. That's a thing that he can just randomly repeat.
He was your first reader? Your beta? Cool. That's so cool. That's such a gift to be able to share that with him.
Yeah, he's very into, he loves books. Cool. So even though he's slightly under the age, I recommend, because he's, we read a lot to him. He was attentive to it. But that's the part he repeated the most.
As someone who grew up reading whatever, I have mixed feelings about the age recommendations. I know why they exist in publishing, because you have books where a child might not have the vocabulary to read it, but it's a good read along for the parent and the child, a good discussion jumping off point. And you have books that children don't have the same vocabulary level at the same age necessarily. So here's what I would say. The age range is a guide, but you know your child, and maybe your child can read it and maybe they can't.
Yeah, it's just a matter of taking up the book and kind of flipping through, and you can decide depending on what you read to your child. Because between 2 and 3, is a gray area in terms of where the child is. Maybe the child's in preschool, maybe they're not. So maybe they're accustomed to certain things. If you've only done shorter, some children that age are still into board books. So it kind of depends. And then the age limit also depends on the reading level of the child. Because some parents saw it and they said, oh, it's a little too easy for my child. I want to continue to challenge them to read longer books, and I was fine. So it's a guideline. It's really up to the parent to look through and kind of decide based on what their child has already if it's something that they can handle.
So you're saying that in terms of the edits, the rhythmic pattern was something that you felt you could take on, and what was something that you were like, hell no?
I can't remember. There was something that you
There's always something. Huh?
And there was something that you had suggested and I changed it, and then you told me no, you liked it originally. I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, because I actually did 2 rounds of edits on this, and there were things that I thought would work, and then when I saw it, I was like, no, she was right in the first place.
I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, I can't remember what it was either, but now that you mention it, I remember that. But I'm glad we brought that up because that's also an organic part of the process. An editor is not God. An editor is not all-knowing, all-seeing, and always right. An editor is an informed perspective that can help you, but they can be wrong as well. Yes?
I mean, yeah, editor can be wrong. Publisher can be wrong in terms of, I don't think this book is going to do well. I mean, J.K. Rowling is the biggest example. She was rejected by so many.
Yeah.
And there's probably somebody that got fired over that. I mean, the whole reason I started my own imprint was because of a feedback from a publisher who told me children's books are not supposed to, are always supposed to have happiness and happily. And I was kind of like, I don't
Wait, sorry, say again. They said it should not have a happy ending?
It should.
It should have a happy ending.
And happily. There should be happy stories kind of thing. And I didn't find that the Johann stories were unhappy. He was mischievous. I remember your editing note is when I had to go back and write an additional story was to maybe end it with a story that shows how his mischievous nature actually worked out for good, which I accepted. But I think it was the note that said, I think this book is good. I think kids will like it. So, you know, I'm gonna find a way. It was that and reading that traditional publishers don't accept story compilations from unknown authors. That was what I had when I was looking for it.
There's so many gates and so many gatekeepers. Which you're one now as well, actually, because you have an imprint.
Right. So I kind of see now, I do take somebody, I'd have to look at it critically. Do I like the story? Do I think people are going to do I think people are going to buy it? Those are the things I would have to make that determination. I could be wrong as well. Person could go find somebody else and do really well. So it's a business, and you know, it's your money, and you have to decide if that's an investment you're willing to make. So we're starting from here.
Hey,
this is Lula.
Hey, Lula.
So today I feel anxious. I'm going to piano lessons for the first time and I don't know what to expect. What if I don't understand what to do? And what if my piano teacher is really mean? I don't think I want to go today, I tell my grandma. Lula, my little Lula, don't let being afraid stop you from dancing on the moon. What does that mean, I ask? It means don't let what you're afraid of stop you from being happy. Wouldn't dancing on the moon make you happy? If I could dance on the moon, I would put on my favorite song. Then I would wave my arms in the air and shake my hips. Dancing on the moon would make me happy, I tell grandma. And wouldn't learning to play piano make you happy? Yes, I nod. So here's what you will say when you need to feel brave. Dance on the moon, dance on the moon. Today I'm going to dance on the moon. I will say that, Grandma. I will try.
I love it. I love it. That's beautiful. That's
Thank you.
beautiful.
I think that the movement page was the hardest one to write.
Because
I was trying to think of a child dancing. I didn't want it to be too ballet. I think that was the one I had to like put on a song and try to look at pictures of children dancing. It's like, what are they doing? It's like the church dresses kids have with the skirts a bit puffier. I think that was the picture that I gave. It's just that her interpretation of it, that's how the pose that she gave. But it's funny because when she gave back the sketch, I said to myself, I didn't want to be ballet because I want to be, not saying that people in the Caribbean don't do ballet, but I wanted to have more of a Caribbean feel. And then I was looking through pictures of African and folklore dancing. I realized, liturgical dancing and so forth, that particular pose seems to translate through all those types of dance. So yeah. I kind of left it.
Why an indie press as opposed to self-publishing? Did I say that before? Because I wanted to clarify that distinction and why you went that route as opposed to the other. I mean, you spoke about why you're not doing traditional publishing, but why indie press as an imprint where you're putting out your books and might put out the books of others as opposed to I'm just gonna self-publish.
There's an aspect of ownership to it. Through the window, I published with Amazon's publishing company, so they would just give you an ISBN number that was assigned to them, just published by Amazon. But with my own press, it's my name and it's my rights. I mean, with self-publishing, it's your rights as well, but there's a sense of ownership, and there was also a sense of, if I could get this process right, I could help somebody else out. Somebody else.
That's the part I love about it.
Could benefit from it. It's not been as quickly in terms of overturning that aspect of the business. I think this is because it's my second venture, and it's also the illustration part. I think that also gave me, I'm learning as I go and using myself, because I want to make the mistakes with myself. Not somebody else is expecting me to know what I'm doing. So going through the illustration process was eye-opening. I know how much it costs now. I think that this helped. So eventually I think I'll get there if I keep in the green.
What do you think? I guess this is my soapbox is the developmental aspect. One of the things you just said that I liked was that you figured if you could get through the door and figure out how this works, then you can help someone else. And I think that's important. Everything that I've tried to do in terms of information sharing has been about that. Has been about I know how hard it was to try to figure this stuff out. And if I can provide that information to someone else without sort of draining myself, which is why I try and put as much read online as I can, then hopefully we can grow a garden as opposed to just a single tree, because I think we have so many stories to tell. I spoke earlier about the databases and the registry and all of that, and just the fact that an independent press in certain other spaces is going to get funding to assist it. But we live here, and here's where we are. But what would you like to see? Given our limited resources, what more could be done that's not being done, that you thought about?
I would like to see more opportunities. Would that depend, just people that we didn't know wrote, that you see every day. We didn't know had stories in them that could write so well. I'll use an example of somebody, if they don't mind. I went to State College, Darrell Gordon. And then when he entered the competition, I was like, wow. When I was reading it, Brian who is this person? This is amazing. And then when the name came up, it's like, I didn't know you wrote. Like, you know what I mean? And he's really, really good. So this
which show is that?
He won twice.
Who's that?
I think Darrell Gordon.
George,
sorry, yes.
Yeah. He won a couple of times, I think, and he's like, every year he's ended, he's been a finalist in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, he's
always
really, and it's somebody that I went to school with, I've seen around, didn't know was into that. So I think there's so many more people like him that are walking around that don't have opportunities. I think the different workshops and stuff, I think those are helpful. I'd like to see more of those because there's persons that just working the nerve up and to be given the opportunity to put their stuff out or to get some advice. I think they're out there and want those opportunities for them. I know, I tell myself there's one or two people that I know that if they ever approach me, I wouldn't hesitate. Is whenever they're ready. One of them I've said to her before. So I just want more opportunities for persons to hone their craft, to get feedback. And I think there's also, as somebody pointed out, because when I had, just teased that this book was coming, she's like, I want a copy. And I said, I didn't say what it was. I didn't say the name of it. And she just said, as long as you wrote it. And I said, that's really, I'm honored. And she said, because she just think there's the importance of hearing more than one story. And she hears, this difference coming from me. Because when we were in primary school, we had those Ladybird books. Ladybird, I'm assuming it was a Caribbean company. I mean, we did The Day at the Beach. Was it? I don't even know.
It never felt very Caribbean to me.
We did The Day at the Beach and The Lucky Dip.
I know where they set, but they never felt very Caribbean. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I don't know where
no disrespect to the Ladybird people.
I mean, I remember the books, but so Caribbean stories had that flavor of the beach, outside doing something, climbing a mango tree. So we just want to show people that we have other things going on. We do other things. Even when we read the younger children's stories of Odali Penn, that repetition of the day at the beach, and that they do in primary school, that's the topics that the teachers give them without realizing there's diversity. Have you ever experienced
that you can do more with the day at the beach than just we have a day at the beach? Like there's so much. I just find that there's so much unexplored territory, even within the territories that we explore regularly. If that makes sense. I just,
So if we could have widened topics to show that we have diverse stories, tell us about your backyard. Tell us about, do you walk to the shop? Do you, do you take the bus? Like, you tell us what you do every day, because I find we just keep going to the same. I mean, beach is the beginning kind of thing.
Okay, so shameless plug alert. Florida said, tell us about your backyard, tell us about going to the shop. So my book, The Jungle Outside, does venture out into the backyard. And Florie's book, The Wonderful World of Your Hand, has this wonderful scene of that every Caribbean child can relate to, going to the shop. And when you come back, for different reasons.
Yeah, right.
So she's walking the talk, and I'm trying to walk the talk.
It's interesting. You watch these TikTok videos where people have the different scenarios, what things Caribbean mothers say and whatever. So the stories are there, the perspectives are there. We can just get them on paper.
Congratulations on another one, because you don't put out bad stuff from the jump, from Pink Teacups and Blue Dresses. You have had a particular, I describe it as you have a very sort of whimsical voice as a writer. Mean that in the best possible way. It's charming, but it's also a little bit, if you picture feet walking on the ground and feet a little bit off the ground, I think of your characters as being a little bit off the ground and in the best possible way. So congratulations on this new one. Congratulations on the imprint. Are you already starting to take in, like, can people submit? Do you have a submission?
I'm not there quite yet. I can't say when, but I think in the near future, I'm getting there.
And there's brand consistency here, because that's Moondancer books.
Yes, I think when I hesitate, because I mean, these things cost money. It's a matter of also having to build the capital to fund the next book.
I don't see it as hesitation. I've published with all kinds of imprints, and there's nothing worse than publishing with an imprint that isn't ready to do what the book needs. You might as well just not have published it. I've published with imprints that were enthusiastic but didn't have the resources to do it. I've had published with imprints who went all out and did everything and happy with them. But the ones that are most frustrating are the ones where you think it's going to go through and do well, but they just don't have the resources to do what they say they can or want to or whatever. So I think it's good that you're taking the time to get it right. That's my 2 cents
Thank
on
you.
that. So thank you very much. Is there anything finally you would like to say to your fans?
I want to say thank you to everybody. I mean, I wouldn't be here without persons having that faith in me to pick up a copy and say, okay, I'll have one, or just hearing I'm publishing a book and saying, oh, I'm gonna get one, without knowing much about it. And the feedback, of course, I really appreciate. I've gotten some lovely feedback from the Wonderful World of Johan. This one I'm starting to get a few as persons begin to read it. So I'm very thankful for that and being able to be in the lives of children and their imaginations. And I hope with this one, the advice resonates with a child that needs it.
Dance on the moon. Don't be afraid to dance on the moon. And if you're feeling inspired, do a TikTok challenge where you're showing yourself dancing on the moon and tag Flory. Thank you so much, Flory. Thanks, everyone.